What's up, guys, and welcome back to another video here on B-Mills Wrestling. In today's video, I'm going to be reading your guys' WWE hot takes. If you're not familiar with this series, I like to do it at least once a week. And the way I do it is I look at your guys' WWE hot takes on Twitter or TikTok, I put them on the video, and I say whether I agree or disagree with them and why. Before we get into this video, if you guys are not already, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. And don't forget to leave a like down below. Alright guys, let's get into this video. The very first hot take that we have on here says, the SmackDown Women's main event scene feels very underwhelming. The bad build for this feud and Naomi going to Raw, having that great program with Io and Rhea, Bianca is missed now more than ever. I totally agree. I think that the SmackDown main event scene, it just lacks something. It just lacks stars. Like, don't get me wrong, I like Tiffany Stratton. I'm not a huge fan of Jade Cargill, but I do like her in a sense. But, like, this feud, it isn't doing it for me. Like, this feud, it doesn't feel real. We just had Jade Cargill getting beat down by the Secret Hervis and Chelsea Green, and then Tiffany Stratton making the save. What sense does that even make? Like, it doesn't even feel like there's a real rivalry or feud between these two. They're both baby faces. I thought maybe, like, Tiffany was going to go back to being a heel or something like that. No, it's just been a boring, basic feud that nobody is intrigued about. And, like, just talking about the SmackDown main event scene, yeah, there's just not a lot going on. Like, Nia Jax, obviously, she was the former champion before Tiffany Stratton. She obviously feuded with Tiffany for that title. I think she did her job. But, like, obviously, you're not going to throw her back into the main event scene right now because it doesn't make any sense. And, you know, when you look at Naomi, now she's on Raw. Charlotte and Alexa Bliss are in the tag team division. There really just isn't anybody, especially with Bianca injured, like you said. I do think this SmackDown, this division, this main event scene, it needs help. It needs some saving, especially if you're going to put the title on Jade after SummerSlam. She's going to need people to feud with, so they got to figure something out. I don't know what that is, but yeah, the Monday Night Raw main event scene with Naomi, Rhea, and Io, that is 10 times better what the SmackDown one is, so hopefully they can figure something out soon. The next one we have on here says, thank you for learning your lesson, WWE, for not putting a banger match on the go-home show of SmackDown instead of your second best show of the year. So pumped for this match. And obviously he's talking about the TLC tag match, which will happen at SummerSlam between the 6 teams in the tag division. I am super excited for this. This is just genuinely going to steal the show. It's going to be probably the best match of both nights. Like, it's not going to matter. It's going to cook. Anytime you put up all these tag teams in the same ring together, especially with the titles hanging high, with ladders and tables involved, you're going to get match of the year contender, match of the century contender. Like, it is going to be so good. Think about the WrestleMania 40 match with the ladder match. Like, that was literally one of the best matches on that show, right? And then the TLC match that we just saw for the tag titles, which was the triple threat between MCMG, DIY, and the Profits. That was literally match of the year contender. So yeah, I have no doubt in my mind this match is absolutely going to cook. And like you said, thank God WWE listened and put this on, you know, the SummerSlam card, because they screwed this up, right? They didn't give the tag titles the proper, you know, shine that they deserved in WrestleMania 41. They should have been featured on WrestleMania 41. They should have had that ladder match that everybody thought was going to happen. Instead, they put on the Raw tag titles, which just made no logical sense because those titles are just awful, right? They don't know how to be booked, right? And then, you know, obviously, you know, having that banger match after WrestleMania 41, right? You know, showing everybody, you know, they deserve to be on a PLE, right? Because they're the best, you know, SmackDown is the best tag division in the entire world. So I was going to be really upset if they were just going to throw this on the go-home episode of SmackDown, or like the SmackDown after SummerSlam like they did with WrestleMania. I was going to be very upset, but thank God they listened. We're going to see it at SummerSlam, and it is going to absolutely. The next one we have on here says, I have a growing feeling that Solo Sikoa might actually retain at SummerSlam. Logically, how is Jacob Fatu supposed to beat the numbers and Solo Sikoa raising the title to the entire arena chanting "F you Solo" had an incredible aura? I want to see more. I just think he is going to retain, right? I don't really think that's like a hot take in this scenario. I do think Jacob Fatu will end up being the one to take the title back from Solo Sikoa. I don't think it should happen at SummerSlam, though. You know, you just handed that title to Solo at the Night of Champions, which wasn't too long ago. If his reign ended at SummerSlam, I'd be super disappointed because his character growth over this past year, you know, getting the fans to actually kind of enjoy what he's doing, right? Not just this enforcer guy that doesn't talk, right? Like, you're seeing the actual, you know, personality of Solo Sikoa. he's super entertaining, and I think he deserves at least a little bit of a lengthy U.S. title run. Like I said, I think it's going to end up with Jacob Fatu being the one to dethrone Solo. That's the only thing that makes sense. But I think, they have to do what they did with Rhea and Liv, how they kept Rhea, getting screwed over, time and time again after all the rematches she had. Right? I think they have to do that. And also just, give Solo some new opponents in the mix as well to feud with for that U.S. title. I really do hope he retains. I see a chance of Jacob Fatu winning, but like you said, with the numbers game, I really don't see Fatu winning. All he has on his side is Jimmy Uso. Meanwhile, Solo has Tonga Loa, JC Mateo, Tala Tonga. Like, the numbers game is clearly on Solo's side. Unless Jacob Fatu has something up his sleeve, maybe like the debut of Zilla Fatu. I don't think that's going to happen. He was just on TNA, so I guess it's not out of the realm. But I just think it's too early for him. I don't think he's going to be in WWE. So yeah, I do think Solo is going to win in this match, and I think he should. The next one we have on here says, I really like the idea of Kiana James being Julia's manager because she can be a great mouthpiece. But in my opinion, this will only work well if Julia remains champion for a long time. I'm talking WrestleMania 42 and perhaps onward. It's one primary reason why Heyman remained relevant. Yeah, I think this is a huge move for WWE. I think obviously this women's United States title is really struggling. Ever since it got introduced, it just hasn't done anything really of worth. Especially when you compare it to the women's IC title, which has just been unbelievable. This title, it needs something. It needs a Julia, right? Julia is one of the best wrestlers in the world. The only problem is her English isn't, the greatest. So pairing Kiana James with her, in my opinion, is perfect because I don't know what else they were going to really do with Kiana James. I think this is a good way to, like, reintroduce her because not too many main roster fans are familiar with her because, she got called up last year and she had her debut match, and then she got hurt like a little bit after, I believe. So, fans on the main roster that don't watch NXT aren't too familiar with her. So I think this is a good way to, reintroduce her to the main roster fans. And, like I said, Julia getting this mouthpiece, this is absolutely huge. And, like you were saying, like, if this is going to work, Julia should have a long title reign. I totally agree. And I think that's a big possibility because Zelina Vega's reign was very short. Chelsea Green, her reign wasn't that long either. I think it is time that we get at least like a somewhat long U.S. title reign for the women. And I think Julia makes the most sense because she's, the best overall wrestler out of those, three that have held the U.S. title. So I could definitely see her holding this to WrestleMania 42. I also just don't see anybody, that could dethrone her on the main roster. Like, I was looking at the SmackDown mid-card division, and I was looking at Zelina Vega. She's not going to win the title back. I don't think Mi Chin is going to be the one. There's some heels. I just don't think that makes sense. Right? Alexa Bliss is involved in the mid-card scene, or else I thought she would have been a good candidate. So, realistically, I just made a predictions video the other day where I said Sol Ruka was going to be the one to do that. So, realistically, Sol's going to be in NXT for, the foreseeable future. So, that, could be like WrestleMania 42, Pat. I do hope Julia holds it to at least WrestleMania 42 because we need to, have this title be more prestige, right? Like, it just feels like the speed title, if I'm being honest with you. So I really do hope she gets a long run, and I hope this duo of Kiana James and Julia ends up working out for the both of them. The next one we have on here says, am I the only one still confused about the Wyatt Six? The two people who have connections to Bray, Bo Dallas and Eric Rowan, don't wrestle as the tag team, but Joe and Dexter do? What is the logic behind that? I think the logic is simple. I think it's that Joe Gacy and Dexter Lumis are the two young superstars of this faction. I think if you kind of view this as the bloodline, right? Eric Rowan is kind of like the enforcer, right? Like the Solo Sikoa. And then Uncle Howdy is like the Roman Reigns, right? The tribal chief, right? The guy in charge, the leader of the group. And then, Joe Gacy and Dexter Lumis, they're kind of like the Usos. They're the tag team of the division. So I get what you're saying because, obviously, Bo Dallas, Uncle Howdy, that's who everyone wants to see. I don't really know what they're doing with him exactly. I like that the Wyatts are in the tag division. I really do. I think it just adds more. But, like, as for Bo Dallas, I really don't know what his game plan is. Like, he's just there to help, his group win tag titles. Like, is he going to do anything? Is he going to have any singles feuds? Like, I feel like we're waiting for him to have singles feuds. He just has not had one yet, right? Like, it's since his return, he hasn't had a singles feud. So as for him, I really don't know what they're doing with him. But like I said, like I think that Eric Rowan, his job is just to be the enforcer of the group. I really don't see him getting like the most tag matches. I just don't think that makes too much sense. But like I said, like I think these two guys being the younger guys of the group, the guys who were in NXT before this group got introduced, I think that WWE really just wants to highlight them specifically because they were in the NXT product before, and main roster fans didn't really know who they were, but now they're getting all this shine because they're paired with Uncle Howdy and the Wyatt Six. So yeah, the next one we have on here says, I don't care which of the 4 big PLEs. This match needs to happen as soon as possible. And it's a picture of Roman Reigns and Braun Breaker, obviously. Yeah, it needs to happen at some point. Honestly, I really would have loved this for SummerSlam instead of the tag team match. Just Roman Reigns versus Braun Breaker. That's what I was banking on. But obviously, it's not going to happen. It can still happen in the near future. This could still happen at WrestleMania 42, maybe. When I look at Roman Reigns, as of right now, I think he has 2 possible WrestleMania 42 opponents. One being Seth Rollins, the other being Braun Breaker. So maybe we get it there. But like I said, I think this would have been great for SummerSlam instead of doing the tag match. But I understand the tag match logic because you don't want to, put Bronson Reed to the side, have Braun Breaker get this big shine. Obviously, if we're being honest, they view Braun Breaker as obviously the guy with more potential than Bronson Reed. I think that's very obvious. But, I like them including Bronson Reed on the SummerSlam card, trying to get him more shine. Obviously, Jey Uso wasn't going to miss SummerSlam. Obviously, if they did Braun Breaker versus Roman Reigns, what does that leave you with Jey Uso? Jey Uso versus Bronson Reed, that is not a SummerSlam match at all. So, in my opinion, they needed this tag team match if you were going to have Jey Uso and Bronson Reed on the card. But like I said, this can still happen at WrestleMania. It could still happen at the Rumble, Survivor Series. You were talking about the big 4 PLEs. I think it's going to happen. I think it would be a greatly missed opportunity if they didn't run this match one-on-one at some point in the near future. I fully expect them to eventually get to it. The next one we have on here says, Seth's injury is a work, and everyone thinks he's going to cash in on Punk at SummerSlam, when he's actually going to cash it in on Cody for a bigger shock moment. Heist of the Century 2.0. Dude, this would actually be maybe the craziest thing to ever take place in WWE if this happened. Like, yeah, obviously a lot of people think Seth's injury is a work. A lot of people think it's real. I'm torn. Like, I really don't know what to think because I see the possibility of Seth Rollins catching in on CM Punk in the main event of night 1 because he said CM Punk's never going to be world champion in WWE as long as he is breathing. So, obviously if he's going to stay true to his word, he's going to cash in. Just the factor of him, like, coming out and then throwing the crutches, like, that would be unbelievable. Just hearing his music in the main event. But you're saying, everyone's thinking that. So him actually cashing it on night 2 would just be, like, unbelievable, like, mind-blowing if he cashed in on Cody. But, like, I don't think this is out of the picture. I think there's a low chance of it happening, but I wouldn't, like, rule it out because, we had a few not segments, but, like, moments between Cody and Seth. They didn't actually, share words on the microphone. Seth did whisper something in Cody's ear. We don't know what that was. This would be insane, though, because, when I look at Cody versus John, I don't see Cena winning because I don't think they would run back that match just to have the same result. But, Cody Rhodes, is he just going to win back the title like that? Or are they going to do something even crazier? Like Seth Rollins cashing in on him? I don't know. I would absolutely love this. Either way, if he cashed in on CM Punk or he cashed in on this match, either way, it would be one of the greatest cash-ins of all time simply because his injury was a work. Now, obviously, I don't know if it's a work. Like I said, I'm 50-50 on it. But if this ends up happening, you'd be a genius, and this would be unbelievable. The next one we have on here says, I really hope that Bayley is turning heel. I don't understand the motivation for her asking for that tag title match, unless it was to soften Lyra up ahead of SummerSlam. At least Creative are finally putting effort into the division, but this match was so out of pocket. Yeah, I don't think this match was so much about the tag division. When I first saw it got announced, I was very confused, and I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. But when you actually, got to see them talking, Lyra was just as confused. She didn't know this match got booked. She's focusing on Becky at SummerSlam. This was kind of like Bayley, like, gaslighting, Lyra into thinking they're still friends, and that nothing ever happened between them, and they don't have any, beef there. I thought this was actually a pretty good angle, because Bayley's pissed off. She's going to miss SummerSlam, right, because, obviously, she couldn't capture the Women's IC title, and then she couldn't defeat Lyra to earn that title match at SummerSlam. And then, she was thinking, okay, how can I get onto that SummerSlam card? Maybe, we get these tag titles because I never actually got to be in the match because Becky Lynch, took her out. So from a logical standpoint, it actually did make sense. because of what Bayley was trying to do. She was, not doing this because, oh, she wants to be friends with Lyra again. No, this was just gaslighting Lyra. I would love a heel turn. If a heel turn happened at SummerSlam from Bayley, I would love it. I think it is kind of needed, especially with this storyline. I think it would make perfect sense, especially if you want to keep the title on Becky Lynch. You can have Bayley, interrupt this match and then cost Lyra Valkyria. I think that's very likely. It's either, in my opinion, Becky putting over Lyra in this trilogy and Lyra wins back the title, or we see Bayley cost Lyra. Now, I know Bayley helping Becky doesn't really make sense, but let's be honest, nothing in WWE, makes sense. We see stuff like this happen all the time, and I could see this happening. That way, you just, go right into a Bayley versus Lyra feud immediately after SummerSlam, and then you have Becky Lynch do something else with the women's IC title. I'd be perfectly fine with that because Becky's literally been a great champion. Her reign has been so enjoyable. So, I really don't want to see it end at SummerSlam. And, if they do this heel turn with Bayley, like I said, you do Bayley versus Lyra. You do their feud after SummerSlam. And then you can have Becky feud with other stars in the mid-card division on Raw to keep elevating that title. So, yeah, I would absolutely love this. And from a character standpoint, Bayley, she's just much better as a heel. The next one we have on here says, what the fuck is LA Knight's booking? Went from pinning Rollins, I know he wasn't supposed to win, to not even on the show. Obviously talking about SummerSlam, LA Knight will not be on SummerSlam. All the matches did get announced. 12 matches, LA Knight not in one of them. I am kind of disappointed. LA Knight is one of your biggest stars. One of the biggest stars in the company. And he's not on SummerSlam, which is the second best show of the year. The first ever 2-night SummerSlam, I may add. And he's not on the card. It is disappointing. I obviously saw a lot of things on Twitter saying that his program was going to be Seth Rollins in a rematch at SummerSlam, but with Seth's injury, that got scrapped. I don't know how real that is, especially if Seth's injury, is a work. I don't think that would have made sense. But it does suck that he's not going to be on the card. Now, if you're going to ask me, oh, well, what would his match be on SummerSlam? I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't, other than like him maybe being in that match with Gunther. I thought maybe like a triple threat with Punk, Gunther, and LA Knight would have been actually really good. But obviously, that's just not how things worked out. And, obviously with Jey Uso and Roman Reigns being the two to go against Braun and Bronson, LA Knight doesn't fit in that category unless they, had a third member in that group. But they don't. So, yeah, I really don't know, what LA Knight was going to do at SummerSlam if it wasn't Braun and Bronson or Seth Rollins or Gunther, right? There's just, in my opinion, there was just nothing for him to do. But it is disappointing because, like I said, he's one of the biggest stars in the company. He gets, the craziest reactions, and he's not going to be on SummerSlam. Just such a Debbie Downer, man. And finally, the last one we have on here says, Gunther beats Punk, and then this music hits. And it is Brock Lesnar. Man, this would be unbelievable. Now, I've always been the guy to say, okay, you got to stop getting your hopes up. Brock Lesnar, he's not coming back. I don't think he needs to come back. I think WWE is fine, just fine without him. But if this were to happen, I would actually get goosebumps. This would be crazy. If he is going to return at any point, it's for Gunther. In my opinion, he's done everything else in WWE, right? He doesn't need any more championship reigns, right? So, he's already feuded with, everybody, top guy in the company. If he's going to come back for anybody, it would be Gunther because that makes the most sense. And then he could put over Gunther. So, I'm not ruling this out. I think there's a 2% chance this actually happens. I think there's a lot of, things that could happen in this main event. I think CM Punk could just walk out as champion. I think Gunther could just walk out as champion. I think Seth Rollins could cash in. And then I think this, could happen. Brock Lesnar could return and come after Gunther. And then, set up, a match or a trilogy. And then, you have Gunther, look tall. If they want to have Gunther have, an insane title run where he's just murking everybody, to kind of build him back up after tapping out the Jey Uso at WrestleMania, having him beat Punk at SummerSlam and then go into a feud with Brock Lesnar, winning that feud, I think at that point everybody would forget about Jey Uso. Now, once again, from a logical standpoint, having him tap out to Jey Uso but then beating CM Punk and Brock Lesnar, it wouldn't make any sense, but WWE, it just doesn't make sense sometimes. But this would be unbelievable, and, I'm knocking on wood, man. I do hope that this does actually happen, but I really think that, the chances of it happening are just slim to none. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you guys like this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up down below. Don't forget to comment down below what future videos you guys want to see from me. Alright guys, peace.